Bcast, did a list of their top 15 sustainability technology podcasts. And lo and behold, here's Little Pirates of Clean Tech not at number 15, not at number 12, not even number 7, number 5. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is November 15th, 2022. I'm Eric Planey.
I am Lucas Finco.
Together, we are the top 15 Pirates of Clean Tech.
Top 5. No.
We're number 5.
Number 5, yeah.
So before we get into that, I have to say, I'm in my hometown of Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. I walked into the hotel to check in last night, and this is a hotel I stayed at frequently. I love the front desk team. And the front desk manager looked at me, and before I even said a word, he goes, "Yar."
Yes.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Our followers are everywhere, of every industry, every walk, every way of life. They're coming and listening to us.
Oh, that's awesome. We definitely appreciate all the support we've had from you, our listeners. And don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want to partner with us, if you want us to live stream from your event, or if you want to sponsor us, or you want to put your brand out there and associate with a top 5 sustainability podcast, feel free to reach out.
Lucas and I are having a big laugh because we got this little bit of a surprise last week when our names popped up in Google News. And when we investigated, we found out a very nice podcast production agency named Bcast did a list of their top 15 sustainability technology podcasts. And lo and behold, here's Little Pirates of Clean Tech not at number 15, not at number 12, not even number 7, number 5. We actually don't even know if that means 5th place, but we're taking it. We're going to run with that puppy.
Yeah, we're running with it.
Yeah. Jokes aside, thank you to everybody. We're having a blast. We're going to continue to have a blast. Like Lucas said, reach out to us. Now that we actually we see our numbers growing and people are reaching out to us more, we may, get a little bit more production quality savvy and make a better podcast for the experience for everybody. But thank you to everyone. We're having a blast. This takes us away from the grind of the day job, and that's always good. Yeah,
thanks for being here. We really enjoy doing this. I mean, we do this out of our love for clean tech and sustainability, and it's great to have you with us on our journey.
Absolutely. So before we get into our articles, and we don't have a guest today, the guest that we were supposed to have today had to postpone because of some fantastic urgent business that we'll talk about next week on our podcast. I'm happy to say, finally, I am drinking the excellent cold IPA light which is called Lily Pond, which is made by a great Youngstown brewer called Noble Creature Cask House in downtown Youngstown. They took an old church and converted it. It's very cool. But what I especially love about this is one of the 2 beers they have made that specifically the proceeds from it goes towards the gorgeous Mill Creek Park in Youngstown, Ohio. It was actually considered one time Mill Creek was the 2nd largest city park in the United States. Now it's actually owned and run by the county, so they don't count it that way. But it's a gorgeous park, and the owner of Noble Creature said during the pandemic, he spent a lot more time in the park, and so as a thank you, as a homage, he came up with this excellent IPA. And I'll tell you, it's freezing outside right now. This is definitely more of a crisp summer IPA, but I'm enjoying it. It's taking me back right now. So,
good deal. Yeah, I'm drinking tonic water with no gin because I have some meetings after this. But Favorite Tree tonic water is my favorite kind of premium tonic water, so I recommend it.
Well, there you go. Well, listen, why don't we get right into the articles?
All right.
Since that's what our top 15 status is based on, delivering the news.
Okay, you're up.
I'm always up first. So actually, I have 4 stories. I'm not going to go through them super fast, but these aren't the deepest stories we've had. 2 of them are actually from CNBC. CNBC's been doing some really good coverage of sustainable energy lately. This is from Natasha Turek on November 1st. The U.S. and the UAE signed a strategic partnership deal to spur $100 billion with a B in clean energy investment. So quick and easy read. Apparently last week, President Biden and the UAE signed a partnership. They call it PACE, which is going to mobilize over 100 billion in investment financing to support, listen to this, 100 gigawatts of clean energy generation by 2035. 100 gigawatts. That's like 85 DeLoreans going back in time. This is, but it's truly remarkable. Obviously the UAE is looking to diversify itself. It's made its money. It's established itself as a global powerhouse based on the oil economy. Even with the price increases this year in a barrel of oil, which I'm sure they're doing really well, they recognize that we're probably at peak demand. And so, this is just a really good article that highlights a lot of what they're working on. A lot of this, which is really interesting because you keep seeing the same phrases and the same themes in some of these MOUs. Supply chain, helping people create the supply chain for mutual benefit for the countries, managing carbon and also methane emissions, which is big in the oil and gas industry, smart use of nuclear energy, and just taking decarbonization out of like the transportation part of supply chain. So I really thought this is a great article. When I was reading it, I kept thinking to myself, there were so many times in my economic development days that we signed MOUs with provinces in other parts of the world and in countries, and you don't know, the follow-up isn't necessarily there. And so the question is, who's going to be paying attention to see if this follow-up generates something meaningful? I suspect it will, because there's a lot of high hands and eyes on these types of MOUs, especially with COP27. This is even talking about COP28. It's going to be in the Middle East. So I do think there's going to be some follow through. We have to watch it. I also think the UAE has the luxury of putting a lot of capital to work. That's going to help us get to our targets that now are in question if we're going to get there by 2050. So overall, a good article.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, this is exactly what we've been calling for. We would love the existing energy industry to come along with us because of their huge, mountains of capital that they can invest in these things. And, there's going to be winners and losers, but if you don't hedge the losers, they become your opponent. So, working with them, if they're going to lose on oil exports, then they should gain on clean energy exports, right? To offset that. So I really like this. It's strategically very smart. I really like this.
Very cool. I agree. So why don't we go to the next one? Before we go to the next one, I said to Jeff and the team at Vintage Estates, beer and wine shop, where I bought the Noble Creature, to give them a shout out. One of the biggest beer stores in the United States, over 1,300 beer labels in one store. It's phenomenal. Okay, now this is actually not a news story, it's a press release, but this is really important for us here in New York. And again, talking about supply chain. So Governor Hochul, and congratulations, the first female governor, actually elected governor in New York, although she's been governor for about a year now. Governor Hochul announces more than $3.7 million to bring climate tech manufacturing and products to New York through the M Corp program, which is actually a kind of a regeneration of existing program. But this program will connect startups to local supply chain to scale climate technologies. This is a press release from November 9th. I'm just gonna full disclosure, my day job at SolarBlock, I've definitely been in communication with NYSERDA for their services. So I want to make sure people know that. I think this is the type of stuff we need, because this is getting into the weeds a little bit. This is trying to marry some of the things that are taking place in New York State with terms of solar development, offshore wind development, and actually making sure that the economy feels it by making sure that companies locally actually have access to it through the supply chain. So this is supporting, climate tech startups, and also connecting them with companies that could, be vendors and suppliers. I see this every day myself with my company. We're making an innovative solar block, but we're using an existing supply chain that we can help those suppliers diversify their end users, and that's a win-win for everybody. So just a quick shout out to NYSERDA. I'd like to see other states, either taking DOE money that they may be getting, infrastructure money, and using it to good work by helping local existing companies make that conversion from selling into existing industries to selling into the green energy supply chain.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm in agreement here. This is really important. This has to be done. This is another one of those middle transition issues where people start to realize, well, wait a minute, it's not easy to just go clean energy overnight. Things are messy. We have to develop supply chains. We have to create all new industries, right? And this is going to take time. So this is great to see the state actually doing something to help the situation.
Yeah, agree. Again, like, we have to focus on these things now because these things take years to get through the system. You're going to
Mhm.
create a supply chain map. That means that supply chain is not going to be up and running for 3, 4, 5 years. Okay.
Right.
And then we're starting to butt up against our 2050 targets. So these are things that should have already taken place. The fact that they didn't is water under the bridge. Let's focus on it going forward.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Going back to CNBC, I love this story. This is like my story of the week. Green hydrogen corridor aims to harness Spanish sunshine and decarbonize Europe's industrial north. This is really cool. This is talking about building an offshore wind and solar supply chain, not supply chain, sorry, kind of a whole system of renewable power generation that's going to go from Spain all the way up to the port of Rotterdam and connect it so that there's sources of renewable energy needed for the electrolysis process to make Europe one of the green hydrogen leaders in the world. This is really important because as we speak, Russia's still bombing Ukraine. It's going to be a cold winter. It's gotten very cold here in the States, so Europe is probably getting very cold. And we know that there's going to be energy issues in Europe this year related to the disruption caused by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So generating green hydrogen, for various uses for an end user basis is going to be incredibly important. So I think the company is called CESPA, which is involved in the exploration and production of oil and gas, is harnessing and trying to create this green hydrogen supply chain. So going back, and they're owned by a Carlyle Group, which was one of my former clients who I used to have a lot of respect for in terms of doing some big, bold, innovative projects. Lucas, I like this one again because what you said a few hours ago. Really, when it comes to like bringing the oil and gas industry along, we need them. We need their resources. We need their engineering capabilities. We need their checks. And so here's another great case of creating a trade lane from all the way from Spain and Portugal all the way up to Rotterdam is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell if they're talking about ships or a pipeline because they talked about the port of Rotterdam, right?
They're talking about Port of Rotterdam, but like for example, the Port of Rotterdam, if I recall, and I think they came through with this, they were going to have a very large LNG export terminal at the Port of Rotterdam, right? Port of Rotterdam is the largest port in the world, I think largest in Europe and one of the largest in the world. So they had an LNG export facility there, right? And that was really the result of taking North American shale gas and having it as a depot to sell it into Europe, which is really good now to diversify from Russian gas. I think this is something very similar. The Port of Rotterdam is probably going to have an import facility on station to be used throughout continental Europe. So I don't know. I suspect this will probably be both ship and potentially pipeline. Yeah. I don't know that for sure, though.
Okay. Well, the point I was going to make is, if you want to ship or pipe energy, I mean, who would you call right now? I mean, you call the oil and gas industry. That's what they do. So right. It makes logical sense for them to be involved in this. And, right. You said it. It's another way in which we can leverage our existing energy assets and knowledge and companies to bring a clean energy transition.
We also talked about a story about a year ago where I think Siemens was going to build, or maybe Vestas was going to build massive wind turbines off the coast of Denmark that had electrolyzers right in the turbine. And you can actually have ships pulled up to that field and the ships would be powered by hydrogen.
Right.
So Port of Rotterdam may also be thinking about that as well. But hats off to Rotterdam, the city and the port for thinking proactively. So at least you get the green hydrogen infrastructure built out and then you could worry about end use application in a meaningful way a little bit down the road.
Yeah, that's good to see.
Shout out to our friends in Oregon. I actually don't even remember this publication. I think it was Oregon Public Broadcasting, quite honestly. Oregon State University plans to develop a battery that will not rely on rare minerals. So this is from Monica Samoya, November 11th. Researchers hope an alternative technology will reduce the need for mining minerals such as lithium and nickel to meet demand for electric vehicle batteries. We've seen a couple of these now, where universities and research institutions are realizing that if we want to get the battery to go where we need it to go and power so much propulsion here in the United States, like every electric, residential vehicle, significant number of commercial vehicles, we have to be smart about the batteries we're making because we may not have enough rare earth minerals. We have companies like Li-Cycle who we've had on the show, to recycling lithium and other precious materials, which is fantastic. So I think all the above solutions also going to include making batteries that have less need for these. And I think OSU here, Oregon State, they were awarded a $3 million grant to explore that development. Hats off to them. I thought this was a really good story. Again, we need all the above solutions. We need academic institutions like Oregon State and other great engineering schools to start thinking and working with commercial companies in their area to start developing together the R&D necessary to take as many minerals out of batteries as possible. So just really good story.
Yeah, this is great to see. I mean, we've been tracking the lithium story, and I think we all know there's not enough lithium, right, for everybody to have an EV in the world. So we have to find a solution to this. It's really good to see the DOE funding this. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I'm super excited too about sodium batteries right now. I can't wait till we get sodium batteries deployed in EVs. I think they're going to reduce the cost of EVs below the cost of ICE vehicles. So that day is coming very soon. I'm just waiting for a press release any day now. Somebody's going to come out and say, hey, we have a $15,000 EV with 90% of the range or 80% of the range of a lithium ion battery. And, everybody's going to run out and buy that EV, right? So someday soon, it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be 15K, but we'll see.
Yeah. And, one thing here, this article talks about too, I think is Portland Electric is going to be involved, because they're also talking about, the need to have storage. And we've talked about it, and, they've talked about it here simply, obviously the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, but it's really more about the duck curve specifically, which is matching solar generation, if you will, to the actual need. And there's at least a 4-hour difference between peak solar generation and peak electricity usage throughout the United States. So, making smarter, faster, bigger batteries that may not require all those resources, because those batteries are the size of truck trailers. You take those precious minerals out of there, and those can deploy then to other automobiles, et cetera. Again, it's another win-win. And yeah, I agree with your thing. Sodium, everyone's talking about sodium right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and notice here, I want to point out the price of lithium has soared, tripling in 2021. I mean, this is what price does. Price is there to match supply and demand. And if there's more demand than supply, then the price goes up. And we're going to see this in my articles too. We have to have a price that communicates to demand, go find another battery that's cheaper if you don't need a lithium battery, right? So that's what.
Yeah, there's a story I did not publish here, but I did read, they're saying the U.S. is getting ready for a massive increase in lithium mining in the western part of the U.S., which is fine, which is great. I would only be happy with mining lithium if we have a game plan to recycle and reuse those batteries, right? So we can get the most out of it, because that's the biggest argument against EVs is it's not as green as possible because you're still mining for these minerals. That's just reality of it. So if we can get the most out of those minerals, great. If we can actually take some of those minerals out of the equation, so much the better.
Yeah, and from what I know, lithium mining is very difficult. Again, because it's dilute is my understanding. So it's very hard to concentrate. If you do a 2x concentration, you got to do it 8, 9, 10 times to get to the quality of lithium you need.
Yep. So those are my stories. I'm pretty happy with them. Great stuff. Again, I think there's a central theme about just growing the game and just getting the innovation economy ramped up, either all the way from the kind of the micro, which is university collaboration, to the macro, which is US and UAE committing to 100 billion in deployment on the grid by 2035.
Yeah, this is neat too. This is a Mustang. That's the Ford Mustang EV, and I think it says, does it say horsepower?
That's in the photo for those that actually don't watch online, because no one watches us on YouTube.
No.
There's a picture of the charging taking place, and it's got the Mustang logo.
Yeah, so you can check the Oregon State story if you want to see.
All right, I'm done. Off to you.
All right, I'm gonna go. Canary Media. This is my story about price. Hawaii moves to a time-varying smart rates for most utility customers. This is the first in the nation's statewide plan that will nudge residents to shift their energy use to times that best align with Hawaii's increasing solar power grid. Again, Hawaii's trying to go 100% renewable. They're a trailblazer on this. this is a very good sign, in my opinion. This is what I would have recommended they done. They're going to have a lot of solar. Prices are going to plummet in the middle of the day when the sun shines. And so customers need to have that information transmitted to them so that they can make decisions about when to use electricity, when to store electricity, etc., so that this renewable electric grid can work. So this is a very good sign for me. It sounds like a time use rate, so it's not real-time pricing. Everybody will know when the prices are high ahead of time. This comes from Julian Spector over at Canary Media. It'll be a very basic 3-tier structure where, in times of high solar output and low electricity usage, like early in the morning, those will be cheap. And then times when it's hot out in the afternoon, in the evening, after the sun goes down, those will be expensive. And so this will be very interesting to see how this plays out. They usually design these rates so that if you don't change your behavior, you end up with the same rate. But eventually that will probably change once people get used to this rate. So very interested to see what happens here. I hope it has the impact that it's intended. Hopefully if prices for, the 6 p.m. hour get so high, people will start adopting storage themselves. So it'll be interesting to see, we're really relying on price here to be the communicator to get solutions to the challenges of renewable energy.
Yeah, I love this story for a couple reasons. First of which, I love that they're also talking about the fact that I think they called it a grid access charge, where somebody who has a small apartment is not going to get billed the same rate as somebody that's got a McMansion with 3 jacuzzis and a Tesla, or I think they actually said 3 Teslas and a jacuzzi. But so first off, I really like that. Secondly, again, I wish the federal government would put a lot more emphasis into incubation and incubators for technology on island economies. Because when it comes to energy, islands have to think smarter than the rest of us because their cost of electricity is so high. And anyone who's been following the state of Hawaii outside of the energy business knows the cost of living there is skyrocketing. And the average citizen is having trouble living in Hawaii now because of all the rich that, especially during COVID, bought second homes in Hawaii and are kind of pricing people out. So who gets disproportionately impacted are lower income families. So having the ability for them to have access to controlling, if you will, their energy bill to have more savings is a great thing. I wish island economies especially Hawaii, especially Puerto Rico, would just be given a little bit more incentivizing from the federal government to propel these technologies so that they could start here and then work their way onto the continent.
It's a little easy too because they're in a tropical climate, so they don't have heating needs. So it makes it a little easier that way also. But I don't know if you know this. I stayed in Hawaii a few years ago, and my hotel didn't even have an air conditioner. So things that we, in temperate climates may feel are absolutely necessary, maybe are just conveniences in a tropical climate. Maybe I'm moving to the tropics. So,
on the flip side, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. When my wife and I go to Puerto Rico a lot, I couldn't believe the hotel we stayed at didn't even have the smart electricity in your hotel room where you have to plug in your key card in order to actually turn the lights on. We could have left the lights and AC running all day when we were at the beach, and that blew my mind away because Puerto Rico and Hawaii are 2 of the most expensive electricity from a rate standpoint anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, I was big on that when I worked in energy efficiency. I wanted hotels to adopt smart energy because then pretty much everybody uses a hotel at least once a year, and you would get to see the new technology for how we're going to manage our energy use in the future. It's a perfect example, I thought. The problem is the people using your hotel are typically from out of state. So they're not your taxpayer, they're not your ratepayer, right? So you're kind of giving benefits to out-of-towners, but I mean, it's pro tourism. Who doesn't love tourism?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Good story.
The next one, so this is the big one. This comes from our friends at Utility Dive. I mean, you can kind of see which news sources we like, Eric, every week here. From Herman Trabish. This is a deep dive as FERC's transmission proposal sparks clashes. Potential solutions emerge from MISO and elsewhere. It's a Midwest ISO. So this is from November 7th. In case you didn't know, FERC is trying to revamp the transmission planning process for the US. It's kind of an issue right now because a lot of transmission planning is done by states or even local utilities. And so there's not a lot of incentive, say, to build a transmission line across the US so that, New York can have hydropower from Washington State, right? So no state is going to vote for that in the middle. So we have to have some kind of solution here that allows more kind of federal influence on transmission planning and build out. That's what they're trying to get to here. And obviously there's clashes on this that go all the way to the 10th Amendment. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of meat here. I don't know if they're missing out. There are only two items. One is to kind of revamp the where is it? Streamline coordination in regional and local transmission planning and interregional planning that allows development costs among states using all benefits to ratepayers. So making sure the benefits are aligned with who pays for it. That sounds logical to me. And they also had something that went away with FERC Order 1000, which was the right of first refusal from utilities, and they're going to reinstate that. So it doesn't seem like a lot to me. I don't know. I would have to probably read some of the documents to find out what's really going on. But I do recommend digging into this if you're interested. We do have to solve this problem. As we talked with Jigger about, we need, his quote was 3 to 5x. I'm more on the 3x side, and we're not getting there. And so something's got to be done here. So.
No, this is great. And you just took the words right out of my mouth. I kept thinking about Jigger and having him on for episode 50. When you see this, I think the one thing that's interesting is Princeton University already released a paper talking about how to improve the grid in wake of the Inflation Reduction Act. So we've given a lot of shout out to Princeton University for their roadmap paperwork, their white papers. So they're continuing on by taking advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act and then taking a lot of the research and saying, okay, here's what we need to do to achieve the goals. So that's hats off to them. Secondly, we got two issues here on the transmission in the United States, right? One is modernizing it for the modern sources of power generation, especially wind and solar. But the other part too is, we don't have a completely interconnected grid, right? So the ISOs kind of break up at the Mississippi River between east and west. And then you've got Texas, standalone Texas, who, will freeze in a snowball well, during any weird winter freeze, whereas Oklahoma is completely fine because they're able to draw electricity from their neighbors. So we have to improve the grid for both resiliency and the ability to adopt new sources of power. And we better get on this, ASAP. And so it's great that, again, going back to what you said a few minutes ago, Lucas, we're starting to think about that middle area, but transmission needs to be front and center. And, this is why I'm so a big believer in the U.S. government needs a climate czar, so that we can really kind of push through different agencies, the ability to create the regulations needed, get through the red tape, and let's improve this infrastructure. I would go more with Jigger. It's better to think about spending 5 times than it is 3 times, just because we can't get this wrong. We cannot do this.
Well, we have a climate czar, right? But he doesn't have any teeth. John Kerry. Yeah, he's just a figurehead.
Great guy, love him.
Yeah,
I don't think he's the right guy. I think you need a real execution guy, a little bit, probably not at the end of his career, not at the beginning of their career, but somebody right in the middle.
Well, I think he might be the right guy for the job he's in. I just think we need somebody more like what you're describing. We need another person.
Yeah, I keep thinking about my good friend and mentor, Eric Spiegel, former CEO of Siemens, head of energy, who's now a football player in high school and college. Gets, Midwest genes there. Midwesterners, we get the job done.
Yeah, get it done. Yeah.
Jokes aside, though, I do worry about this little issue that you kind of gets from some of these Democrat initiatives, which is Democrats do a great job of putting together glossy presentations and big picture analysis. But someone's just got to get the job done now.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of ground. We didn't really talk about the election a lot. And I think mainly because, first off, the results aren't completely in. But secondly, I think that the clean energy revolution is kind of on its way, regardless of who's in office and who's not. Obviously,
Correct.
there's some stumbling blocks, but here in New York State, I thought one thing was interesting. Governor Hochul, the Democrat, won 53-47 for governor, but 68% of New Yorkers voted for the $4.2 billion green energy bond that's going to green a lot of the infrastructure. So when you take that, means a lot of Republicans and independents also voted for that bill. So that gives me hope that states like Colorado are leading the way, where Colorado could be a red state in certain circles, but they still believe in protecting their land, and sustainability is the way to do that.
Yep, we've said it before, and I'll say it every episode if I have to. Clean energy is a bipartisan issue. More than half of Republicans prefer clean energy. So it's not a political issue at all.
It's a national security issue too, quite honestly.
Yeah, among other things.
It's all the above. Well, before we wrap up here, we got to do our disclaimers. Views and opinions expressed by Lucas, Finco, and myself are those of ourselves and not necessarily of any organization we may be affiliated with. And also, be sure to do your homework for any public companies that we may have mentioned that have public securities. We are not making a recommendation one way or the other on its security. Please consult a registered investment advisor, certified advisor, for making any decisions on any securities.
But I like the stock.
Well, good for you, man. Good for you.
Not going to tell you which one though. Yeah, as normal, you can find us on your favorite podcast venue. We're on about a dozen podcast venues. You search for Pirates of Clean Tech and you click follow or subscribe so you get updated on when our latest episodes drop. We're also on YouTube if you want to see our pretty faces and follow along on the articles with us. You just go to YouTube, Pirates of Clean Tech, you click subscribe, and then you click the little alarm bell so you get notifications on your phone like I do.
Yep. So, this is a great episode. We have a great guest lined up for next week. We have some other guests that we're lining up for before the holidays. For everyone, thank you again. We were truly honored and humbled to find out that we're a top 15 podcast. And, we've been joking about it, but the reality is it's because of people listening to us that really drives us and motivates us further. So thank you so much.
Yeah. When are we going to have wireless charging EVs, Eric? I have some questions about this.
That's a great idea. We should have a conversation. We may be having a conversation about that next week.
We should have a fantastic guest on to talk to us about this.
So that your Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade floats can actually be running down the street and they have inductive charging to keep those batteries humming.
Yeah. Buses with inductive charging at the bus stops so they can run all day.
Exactly. Well, listen, with that little teaser for next week, I'm Eric Planey.
I am Lucas Finco.
And together, thank you, noble creature, Cast House. We are the Pirates of Clean Tech.
Yarr.